Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're tackling something one of you asked for a look into the Swedish security service. SAPO.
That's right. A listener wanted a quick, solid overview of a significant institution.
Exactly. So we've pulled together info, mainly from SAPO's own published materials, aiming to give you a really clear picture.
Uh-huh. The goal is basically to hit the highlights, where it came from, how it changed, what it does now.
Without getting totally lost in the weeds. Okay, let's get into it.
It's interesting, isn't it, how these agencies often pop up or get bigger when things feel unstable internationally.
Yeah, that pattern seems pretty common.
And SAPO's story, well, its earliest seed was planted way back in 1914, World War I.
Okay, 1914, so right at the beginning of the war.
Precisely. They set up a special police bureau, Police Byron was the name, reported directly to the military's general staff.
And the main job.
Primarily national security, specifically counter-espionage, protecting Sweden from spying. The first chief was a Captain Erik of Edholm.
So a direct military link from the start. But it didn't just carry on smoothly after the war ended, did it?
No. The formal operations stopped in 1918. But, the need didn't just vanish overnight.
Right.
So a smaller intelligence function kept going, but within the Stockholm police force, led by Chief Superintendent Erik Hallgren.
And their focus shifted a bit then.
It did. Early on, they were watching domestic groups, communists initially, and then later, as the political climate in Europe changed, Nazis too.
Interesting. So looking both inwards and outwards, even back then?
Yeah, and Hallgren, he actually went on to head the General Security Service later. So those early days were pretty formative.
Okay, then things shift again in the 30s, moving to the state police.
That's right, 1932. Operations moved to the newly formed state police, the Säkerhetspolisen.
But I gather that's set up. Well, it wasn't quite up to the task as war clouds gathered again.
That's a really key point. It lacked crucial tools, things we think of as basic intelligence capabilities now, like tapping phones or intercepting mail. They just didn't have the resources or authority for that.
Ah, okay.
And Lieutenant Colonel Carlos Adlercreutz, he saw this gap. Coming from military intelligence, he recognized how vulnerable this made Sweden.
Especially with Europe heading towards another war.
Exactly. So he pushed for something stronger, and his initiative directly led to creating the General Security Service in 1938.
Just in time, really.
Pretty much.
So fast forward into World War II.
Yeah.
This new agency must have been incredibly busy. The numbers I saw were just staggering.
Oh, they were monitoring communications on a huge scale. You mentioned, 25,000 phone calls a week?
Yeah, and over 200,000 letters intercepted weekly. That's a lot.
It really paints a picture of the wartime pressure, doesn't it? The perceived need for intelligence was immense. It shows how these global conflicts really fuel the expansion of security services.
Makes sense. But after World War I, that level of activity didn't just continue indefinitely post-war.
No, you're right. There was a parliamentary review and evaluation, and operations were significantly scaled back.
Right, reorganized again under the state police, focusing mainly on counter-espionage. It does seem like this cycle of expansion, then contraction or adjustment.
It's a recurring theme. Then came another big change in 1965. The Swedish police forces were nationalized, centralized.
Okay, what did that mean for security work?
It meant security was organized under the National Police Board. It became a specific department within it, the Department of Security, or RPSC.
RPSA.
Got it. That was a structure heading into the Cold War era, and that period, it brought a whole new set of challenges.
Right, the Cold War. Even though Sweden was neutral, it was still a hotbed for espionage, wasn't it?
Absolutely. A significant amount of foreign intelligence activity happened on Swedish soil.
And this is when we see some pretty famous spy cases emerge.
Yeah.
Enbam, Anderson, Wennerström, Bergling.
Yes, all caught spying for the Soviet Union. These were major cases. They really drove home Sweden's vulnerability, despite its neutrality.
And what's striking is the penalty versus, what happened later.
Exactly. They all received lifetime penal labor, the harshest civilian sentence possible then, but they were all pardoned after roughly 10 years or so.
That's quite a contrast. Any thoughts on why?
Well, it's complex. It likely reflects, the initial need for strong deterrence against espionage, but perhaps also a later societal or political desire to maybe move beyond those specific Cold War confrontations. It highlights the tension.
Definitely food for thought.
Oh.
Okay, moving into the 70s. the threats seem to shift again. Terrorism starts to emerge more prominently.
Yes, particularly acts by Croatian separatists. There was the attack on the Yugoslavian embassy in 71.
Right, and the SAS plane hijacking in 72.
Exactly. Those events were wake-up calls. They led directly to Sweden passing its first terrorist act in 1973.
What did that act allow?
Among other things, it gave authorities the power to deport foreign nationals suspected of links to terrorist groups. And importantly, it also resulted in more resources for the Department of Security, RPS-SEC.
So, again, specific events driving legislative and resource changes.
It's a clear pattern.
Then, of course, the event that looms large, the assassination of Prime Minister Olof Palme in 1986.
A truly shocking event for Sweden, and profoundly impactful for the security services.
He had declined protection that night, which is often mentioned. And while the security department wasn't, directly blamed in the initial findings,
The fallout was immense. It led to resignations at the top, the National Police Commissioner, the head of the security department, especially after the Ebbe Carlson affair unfolded.
right, that whole controversy. And ultimately, Palme's assassination was the key driver for creating SEPO as a distinct entity.
Absolutely. It was a major catalyst. Recommendations came out of the post-assassination reviews, pushing for a more independent security service.
So SEPO was officially established October 1st, 1989.
Correct. It got more independence, its own director general, and stronger political oversight, although it was still formally part of the National Police Board at that point.
But a significant step. And it also took over all close protection duties then.
Yes. Full responsibility for protecting dignitaries and officials shifted to SEPO.
Sadly, the need for that protection was tragically highlighted again with the assassination of Foreign Minister Anna Lindh in 2003.
Yes, another terrible event. And that led to another review and a significant increase in resources for close protection. They essentially doubled the number of officers.
Which brings us closer to the present day. The final big structural change seems to be in 2015.
That's right. January 1st, 2015, SEPO became a fully independent government agency reporting to the Ministry of Justice.
So finally detached from the National Police Board.
Exactly. A complete separation, emphasizing its unique role. And around the same time, 2014, they consolidated their headquarters into one big facility in Solana, bringing staff together from, I think, 5 different sites.
A sign of its growth and maybe increased operational tempo.
Likely both, reflecting the complexity of modern security threats.
Okay, so that's the history, the evolution. What about today? What are SEPO's main jobs? It's clearly more than just spies and bodyguards.
Definitely. The mandate is quite broad now. First, counter-espionage is still absolutely core, preventing and detecting spying against Sweden, Swedish interests abroad, and also foreign interests or refugees within Sweden.
Right, makes sense. What else?
Then there's counter-subversion. This means tackling illegal activities like violence, threats, harassment that are aimed at, say, influencing government policy illegally or stopping people from exercising their democratic rights. Think extremist groups.
Right, domestic threats to the democratic system itself.
Precisely. And then, of course, a huge one today, counterterrorism.
I was waiting for that one.
Yeah. Preventing and detecting terrorism aimed at Sweden or foreign interests here, but also looking at international terrorism networks, their financing, their support structures, if they exist within Sweden.
A major undertaking and dignitary protection.
Still a critical function, protecting senior government officials, the royal family, visiting foreign dignitaries, diplomats. It's a big job.
And one more, protective security.
Yes, that involves advising companies and government agencies on their own security measures, conducting oversight, helping harden potential targets, essentially.
That's a pretty wide range of responsibilities. How are they actually set up to handle all that, the organization itself?
Well, it's headed by a director general, currently is Charlotte von Essen, and a chief operating officer.
Okay.
And organizationally, it's broken down into 4 main departments. You've got intelligence collection.
Which includes gathering info on the ground.
Exactly. That's where the regional units fit in, doing a lot of the human intelligence gathering. Then there's security intelligence, which is more about analysis, making sense of the data.
Right. Analysis is key.
Then security measures that department handles, things like the close protection details, investigations, the operational responses. And finally, central support functions, which is like HR, IT, logistics, the backbone stuff, plus the Secretariat for Management Support.
And how many people are we talking about?
The numbers fluctuate, but around 2020, it was roughly 1,400 employees. About 10% of those are spread across 6 regional units covering different parts of Sweden.
So sizable, but maybe not as huge as some might imagine for a country like Sweden.
Perhaps. And it's really important to stress their independence now. As a distinct agency under the Ministry of Justice, the government or ministers can't just, step in and tell them what to do on specific cases.
They operate under general directives, but case decisions are theirs.
That's the principle. And naturally, a lot of their detailed work, their reports, their specific directives, it's classified, national security reasons.
Understood. We actually have some older budget data.
Yeah.
From 2014, that gives a snapshot of priorities back then.
Oh, yeah. What did that show?
Well, dignitary protection was the biggest chunk, 44%.
Yeah.
And counterterrorism at 30%. After that, counterespionage, countersubversion, and protective security took smaller slices.
44% on dignitary protection is significant.
It stood out to me, too. Does that maybe reflect the post-Anna Lindh focus? Or is protection always such a large part? The overall budget in 2019 was about 1.56 billion Swedish kroner.
It's likely a combination of factors. Protecting key figures is inherently resource-intensive personnel, logistics, planning. And yes, major events like the Lindh assassination certainly reinforce the perceived need and potentially drive funding allocation for a period. But it's generally a core demanding function.
Makes sense. One last little point, and it's kind of interesting how SAPO pops up in fiction.
Ah, like in popular culture.
Yeah, Stieg Larsson's Millennium books mention it, and apparently gets a nod in the American show, The Americans.
Right. It just shows these agencies sort of seep into public consciousness, sometimes feeding that sense of, mystery or intrigue surrounding intelligence work.
Definitely. Okay, so let's try to wrap this up. Summing up our deep dive today, we've seen SAPO grow from this wartime necessity, this Polyspherian.
Yeah, evolving through different structures, reacting to World War II, the Cold War, terrorism.
To become this modern, independent agency it is today.
Yeah.
With a really broad mission set way beyond just spies.
Counterterrorism, countersubversion, dignitary protection, protective security, they're all major parts now. It really mirrors how security challenges themselves have evolved.
Absolutely. And for you, our listener, who wanted that efficient overview, we hope this walk through its history, its structure, its jobs has given you that solid understanding of this vital Swedish institution.
And perhaps something to think about going forward. Given SIPO's growing list of tasks in, a pretty complicated world, how will its role, maybe its methods, need to keep adapting? In the future, how do you continue to balance those crucial security needs with protecting individual rights and liberties? That's the ongoing challenge, isn't it?